Hey, it's Trissa from Sewing and Things, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do the try color block hack for the Constance sew along. Now this fabric that I'm using, it's cashmere waffle from Mily Mae. It is waffle and it tends to be stretchy, but not with the best recovery, so this is actually a lot slouchier than normal for my measured size, and so I should have moved my elbow patches down just a smidge, because you can see when I stand, my elbow's right here. So I should have moved those up a little bit based on this material, but it's fine. But yeah, so, but I cheated and I did a hood. I made it a hoodie instead of a shirt. But you can add a hood or you can add a neckband. But yeah, so you should also already have your pattern pieces prepped and ready for the color blocking. If not, I will go ahead and link the video for that. But yeah, so let's get to it. I am going to be veering ever so slightly from this pin inspiration since I am going to be adding a hood to mine. But you can either add a hood like I am, or you can add a neckband like the picture. It is entirely up to you. But we're going to start out by cutting out our fabric. And I'm going to start off with the black. So make sure you grab your sleeve top, and then your top back, and your top front pieces. Go ahead and put a pattern weight on your piece if you so choose. For your sleeve top, just make sure you are cutting a front and, well, make sure you're cutting a left and a right piece, so a mirrored image. And don't forget to mark the shoulder seam and the front. And flip it over so you have a mirrored pair. And I'm also going to be cutting out a hood with this black, but I am going to do that later. I'm going to put this aside for now. It's a great fabric. Now with this inspiration photo, it does have a curved hem, but since I am going to make this more of a hoodie, I'm going to make it banded. So I went ahead and I put a mark on the banded spot. So I'm just going to fold that and cut there instead of the curved hem. So since this is the bottom front, I am just going to put it with my front piece. That way I don't get them mixed up of which one is which. I'm going to put these together. Cover the bottom piece. Again, I'm going to fold this one up because I'm going to do a banded bottom. Now I'm going to grab my sleeve piece. I'm also going to be cutting these two at mirrored. So the Conspiration does have it as a 3/4 sleeves, but I'm actually going to make this one long sleeve. So I am going to go ahead and turn on my projector and cut that out really quick, and then I'll be back. With both sleeve pieces cut out, I'm going to go ahead and attach the color block pieces together before I add on the elbow patches. So I'm going to start off by doing that. So you want to make sure your fabric is right side facing up. See, I put my little pin for the front, so I'll match that up with whatever the front one is. Now my waffle's a little bit tricky. I mean, both sides look fine for the wrong side versus the right side. So for waffle, you really can just pick whatever side you like better. And I like this side, so I need this one. Just going to go ahead and lay those on top of each other. I'm going to sew that right side together using my 3/8" seam allowance. And then I'll do the same thing with my other piece, making sure I'm doing right sides together. So I'm going to go ahead and sew both of those, and then I'll come back. When you are sewing anything with a lot of stretch and little recovery, when you are going with the greatest stretch, you need to be really careful that you aren't sewing it to where it's stretching out. Especially with this waffle, it does not have a whole lot of recovery. So I bumped up my differential on my serger. But you can also increase your stitch length a little bit on your sewing machine if you're sewing it with that, to help it not stretch out as much. You can also add some wash away tape to help make sure it doesn't stretch and grow while you sew, because you definitely don't want that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and turn on my projector so we can mark where to put our elbow patches. And I cut these out so the greatest stretch is going vertical. That way when you move your elbow, it can stretch with my elbow. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. Okay, it's a little hard to see the projection, but if you have a pattern piece, you can just cut it out. Cut out the little hole. And so for this, both sides look basically the same. The right and wrong side of this fabric basically looks identical. So it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to put it right here. I have some wash away tape that I'm going to try some of it. It's lost its stick, so hopefully this works okay. So I'm actually going to start off by putting it on the wrong side of my elbow patch in hopes that it will help it from stretching when I sew it. Because my machine has an applique setting, but you can also use a zigzag stitch. But I was going to try to do that and hope that it's not going to stretch out a ridiculous amount. So fingers crossed that it won't do that. So I'm just going to use some of this Wash Away Wonder Tape. It's double-sided. I really don't know the best way that you're supposed to use this stuff, but whatever. Again, my sticky is not working very well. I think one of my kids sucked on it, or when they were a baby. I think it might have been Max or Brooklyn. I don't even know. But I probably should buy some new stuff one of these days. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stick it on here. I don't know if it's going to do anything with this waffle that I have. Hopefully it will work. I'm going to just throw a few pins on there. Anyway, just to keep it from moving. So you'll do this exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this on, and then I'll be back. So that wash away tape didn't really do a thing. I mean, it did hold it in place, which is very helpful. But you can see it's still super wavy. And so the thing that happens, or the reason why this happens, is because the stitches are so close together that it is slowly stretching it while it's sewing. So hopefully I can steam it a little bit and it'll tone down a bit. But what you can do to prevent this a little bit more, from at least a little bit less from happening, is using a zigzag stitch that isn't so close together. So when it's really close together, that will help it stretch out. But I'm going to just do the exact same thing on the other one. If I'm going to have one wavy, might as well have them both a little wavy. But the applique stitch function probably was a little bit too intense for this. But, I mean, it looks good if I stretch it like this. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do that other elbow patch, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I tried to do a little something different with this one to see if it works a little bit better. So I started off by just basting it on with a long straight stitch. You can see it's a lot flatter right now. So I have another stitch on my machine that goes around and then goes in. And so I'm going to try using that and see what happens. So I'm going to go do that and then I'll come back. Okay, that was a million times better. You can see here that it's just barely going along the edge. And that looks so much nicer and it's so much flatter. So definitely the least amount of stitches will help it stretch out the least. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on my other one, but I will post a picture of what that stitch looks like. It's a little comb, so there's a lot of sewing machines that do have that stitch, but I'll go ahead and post a picture of what that looks like in case your machine has it and you want to try that. But I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and then I'll come back. Now you want to grab your back. You want to grab your front pieces, or your bodice pieces technically. And so open this up. We're just going to match together, right sides together. You're going to sew this on with your seam allowance of your choice, whatever you did when you made your color blocking piece. I did 3/8 of an inch, so that is what I'm going to be sewing on. So you're going to sew that. Make sure everything is lining up nicely. So sew that on with your seam allowance, and then also do that with your back piece. So go ahead and do both of those, and then we'll come back. With both our front and back pieces sewn, we're now going to add our chest pocket. Now I cut this out at approximately 5 inches across by 5.5 inches down. And so I think it'll be a good size for me. But if you have another patch pocket, you can go ahead and cut that out. I'm sure you can Google one or find one on Pinterest, but that's what I did for this. So I'm going to just go ahead and top stitch this down, and then I'm going to top stitch it on to my bodice front. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back. So I went ahead and top stitched this. I don't have any matching thread, so I'm just going to put it on with black. But this material does not press very well, so I'm going to be using my Wonder Tape just to hold it in place for when I top stitch it. That way it doesn't move around. That way the little hems don't move around. So on the pin, the pocket is coming just into the black. And so I'm going to put it right here, and hopefully it looks okay. I'm going to go ahead and pin that in place. And I'm just going to use my cover stitch to top stitch this one down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back. With our pocket sewn on, we are now going to take our back piece and sew both of these pieces together at the shoulder seam. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. With both of our sleeves prepped, we're now ready to attach them to the bodice. So go ahead and grab that. Start off by pinning your sleeve to the shoulder seam. You want to make sure that the patch is going to be on the back side. And this spot might get a little bulky, but just place it together as best you can. Pin it or clip it in place. It's going to be hidden under the armpit anyway. Then turn it around. We're going to slightly stretch. Now once both sleeves are pinned, go ahead and sew that on, and then we'll come back. With both sleeves sewn, we are now going to match up the side seam. Make sure you match up your sleeve seam and pin it all the way down So go ahead and pin both sides and then sew both of those up, and then we'll come back. When I sewed my side seam, I nested my sleeves together. Since it's pretty bulky right here of how I did my color blocking, this made it lay a lot better. It's a lot easier than trying to go through these seams and then all of these ones. So I suggest nesting it if it ends up getting really bulky right here, and it'll make it a little bit easier to go through your machine. Once your side seams are sewn, go ahead and turn that right side out. So now you basically need to add a neckband or a hood, cuffs or a hem. And so, but after that is all finished, then you're done. To stay up to date on the latest videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel, or you can check out my blog at sewingandthings.com.